It was a quiet Saturday morning when the first crack in my marriage appeared. I didn't even notice it at the time. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee and scrolling through the news on my phone, while my wife, Emily, was standing by the counter, texting someone. Her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the usual polite smile she gave me or the forced one she showed at work events. No, this was different. It was real, full of life, as though she was looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. "Who's got you smiling like that?" I asked, half joking. She froze for a split second, then chuckled nervously. "Oh, just Beth. She sent me a funny meme." I nodded, not thinking much of it. Beth was her best friend from college, and they often shared inside jokes I never understood. But as the weeks went on, I started noticing more of those moments. Her staying up late, working on a project, her phone constantly buzzing with notifications, and her newfound habit of guarding her screen like it held state secrets. I told myself it was nothing. After all, we'd been married for 10 years. Sure, we'd hit a few rough patches like any couple, but we were solid, or so I thought. Then came the day everything changed. One night, Emily announced she'd be heading out for a girls' night. She was dressed to the nines, heels, a little black dress, and a touch of perfume she hadn't worn in months. It struck me as odd. Beth wasn't the type to hit trendy bars or clubs, and Emily's outfit seemed more fitting for a date than a casual night with friends. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. "Don't wait up," she said with a smile as she grabbed her purse and walked out the door. I tried to distract myself by watching a movie, but my mind kept wandering. Something didn't feel right. Around midnight, curiosity got the best of me. I opened our shared phone account online, something I'd never done before. As I scrolled through the call logs, one number stood out. It wasn't Beth. In fact, it wasn't any name I recognized. The number appeared frequently during her lunch breaks, late at night, even on weekends. My heart sank. I copied it down and decided to call the next day. When a man's voice answered, I hung up immediately. My hands were shaking. I couldn't jump to conclusions, but deep down, I already knew. The following week, I started paying closer attention. Emily's absences became more frequent, and her excuses grew flimsier. One day, when she said she'd be working late, I drove by her office. The parking lot was nearly empty, and her car was nowhere in sight. My suspicions were no longer just suspicions. They were facts. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment in our marriage that had led us here. The late nights, the distant looks, the sudden bursts of happiness that didn't involve me. I decided I needed answers, but I didn't want a confrontation. Not yet. The next day, I hired a private investigator. It felt drastic, almost like something out of a bad movie, but I had no other choice. I needed proof. If my marriage was falling apart, I at least wanted to know why. 2 weeks later, the investigator handed me a folder. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photos of Emily with a man I didn't recognize. They were holding hands, laughing, and entering a hotel together. My chest tightened as I flipped through the images. There was no denying it now. Emily was having an affair. That night, I sat in my car for hours, staring at those pictures. I felt anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. But amidst the chaos of my emotions, a sense of clarity emerged. I realized I had a choice. I could confront her and demand answers, or I could take control of the situation on my own terms. I chose the latter. Over the next few days, I began to make preparations. I opened a new bank account, transferred half of our savings, and started looking for apartments. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to leave empty-handed. If Emily had chosen someone else, then she didn't deserve me, or the life we'd built together. One evening, while Emily was out, I packed my things. I took only what I needed: clothes, personal documents, and a few sentimental items. I left my wedding ring on the dresser with a note that simply read, "I know. Don't call me." As I walked out of the house for the last time, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The life I thought I had was over, but a new one was just beginning. In the days that followed, Emily tried to contact me. She called, texted, even showed up at my new apartment. But I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear her excuses or apologies. I wasn't interested in explanations. She'd made her choice, and now I was making mine. Months passed, and I began to rebuild my life. I threw myself into work, reconnected with old friends, and even started therapy to process everything I'd been through. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. One day, I received a letter from Emily. It was long, full of apologies and admissions. She wrote about how she'd taken me for granted, how she'd let herself get swept up in something meaningless. She begged for another chance, promising to do whatever it took to fix things. I read the letter once, then folded it and put it away. Forgiveness was one thing, but going back was another. I wasn't about to lose myself again. Looking back, I realized that leaving Emily wasn't just about escaping her betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my happiness, and my sense of self. And for that, I'll always be grateful. Not to her, but to myself for having the strength to walk away.